What's up guys, it's Blaze, and today I've completed my modifications for the 2013 Jabba's Sail Barge, and I have turned it into the Bounty Hunter Cruiser. So on the exterior, it may not look like much has changed, but I am incredibly proud of this mod, and I have put a lot into this. I really packed it full, more so than I do with a lot of other mods. I had one, what I thought was a final draft, and I was ready to make the video the same night that I started modding it, that very first night. And then a few days later, I got a Bounty Hunter Battlepack. So then I used those pieces to help further mod it. And then now I believe I'm at my first rough final draft. I might make some further modifications, but for now it's finished. So the first step was just removing the sails. The sails looked great, but they took up a whole lot of space, and it really was just annoying to have to deal with your hands when you're playing up on the deck. So I just nixed those and took those off. So after I took off the sails, I was honestly ready to call the exterior mods good. I really didn't think I was going to have to do much else. And then I started experimenting with moving around these winglets right here, and I knew I needed to add some extra engine power apart from what was already on the back, because I already like the rear engine look. It's very clean and it just looks real good, but I knew I had to add something else because a Bounty Hunter ship is going to be rugged. Like, Bounty Hunter ships are not traditionally very clean, sleek craft like Jabba's sail barge is. So I knew I had to rough it up and add some extra bits here or there and add in some extra detail engraving. So with all that in mind, we have come to the exterior you see before you. It is symmetrical on both sides, so we'll just go over the one. But up at the front, you can see not a whole lot has changed. I've pretty much kept this stock almost, except for on the underside. That's where the most has changed on the front end. So there are cannons on both sides, and they do have a little bit of posability. So if you want to do some bombardment from above, you could totally point them down and do that. And then as well, behind the cannons, you can see I have some extra handles in there, some bars sticking out, and then some colored pieces in there. I call that little bit there the communications array. That is how they get all their communications. Right next to the weapons array there, kind of nice, neat, hidden, tucked under the ship. So in between the stickered pieces that were already on the set, I just went in and added some grills and then some smooth circular tiles on there to help add in some extra detail. Of course, you saw earlier these winglets that I moved. I did actually change the orientation of the hinge back here, so that way when I do extend it out, it can only hit a certain point. So then I just flipped it around, so that way when I push it back, I only have to level out the top part and I don't have to keep both points in a perfect position. And then as well, when I flipped it around, I tucked it real close to the ship and then angled it in, and it actually looked like a nice little bit of armor plating going down the sides. And originally, I didn't even have the engines on the winglets here. It was just the winglets. And then just yesterday, I added on the engines, and I thought it looked pretty good. I was hoping to maybe get some translucent studs in there, but I decided since on this back end there's no translucent red or orange plume or flame coming out of the engines, I was going to keep up that style and not have any of that on the two engines on the wings. And it looks real good. It still tucks up next to the ship real nicely, and it actually makes lining up this winglet against the ship real easy, because before I had to line it up perfectly, but now with the engine build on the back, I can just ram it up against the Technic bar right here, and then I can push it in and it's in the perfect position. And then moving towards the top deck, you can see these curved slope pieces that were hanging downwards before are now going upwards. And then I added just a few tiles and some grill pieces here or there. So then on the rear engines on the bottom, you can actually see I used those old scuba weapons, those scuba guns that they used to include as greebling on some Star Wars sets as some extra detail down there. And then while we're on the other side, I did add somewhat of an airlock, so it does look like other ships can dock with this ship. And you do see these Technic posable arms that I've added on both sides. These aren't meant to be legs or landing gear at all. I just added these on to help lift it off the ground so that these doors and the walls would fold down easier in play. But after I added them on, I realized that they work really well as handles. When you're playing with it, it won't fall off and it makes swooshing it real easy. Then heading up to the top, the front end hasn't changed much. Like I said earlier, I just removed the big sail that was on there. This middle section has changed up a bit, and that's because it has something to do with the interior. You can see that I moved the big turbo laser cannon further back, and I changed up the design of it a little bit. I like this quite a bit better. It's a whole lot more compact and doesn't take up as much space, so I was able to tuck it further back. And then moving back to this nice little closed off area, I added another clipped area so that this turret could cover the rear as well as the two sides. And then you can very obviously see that I've beefed up this turret quite a bit. I added a nice translucent translucent piece right here because I wanted to show that some technology was added on, and that's because I wanted this turret to be able to be controlled from the inside. So this is meant to simulate some kind of Bluetooth link to a console that's inside the ship. But if you do want to control from the outside, on the top half I did add a nice little scope going all the way back, in traditional Star Wars fashion, it's in a real weird shape, and then it goes from real big to real tiny at the very end. And then that pretty much covers all the exterior modifications. Now the interior is incredibly packed, so we're going to go over it by sections, and we'll start up at the front. So this front bit originally housed a big cannon piece that you could actually shoot cylinder pieces out of, but I didn't really care for that, and I wanted to have a nice pilot seat area. So that's what I turned this area into, is it's got a nice pilot seat, and then it also has a co-pilot seat in the rear. So up front you can see I've got Bosk in there, but we're going to go ahead and tear him out to see a little bit more detail. He has a nice little tan chair build. Like I did with my Far From Home ship, and like I've done with many other ships, I like to make the cockpit chair real big and like real command feeling, so it feels official, like you're actually piloting a whole ship. And then in front of Bosk, you can see I have 2 clear cheese wedges to simulate some kind of dashboards. And then in front of that, I just have some like internal detail with a nice red stud, simulate some power or something. And on the above portion, I do have more clear cheese wedges in there, as well as a joystick to help control it. Because when it does fold down, it is going to be right in front of him, and the joysticks are almost right in his hands. So if you have the original set, you could probably tell I did change the location of this hinge where this whole front flap folds. It used to fold kind of towards the middle, but I changed it to where it was towards the back so I could get more finger room in here to play around. So on the rear portion, I actually have 4 llams sitting in there, so we're going to go ahead and tear them out, and then we'll get a better look. So I took off some pieces to get you a better look at that. So this rear seat can be a co-pilot seat, but it was actually designed to be a gunner seat. Since I have 4 llama in there, and it is a droid that can perform multiple functions at once, it could be a co-pilot and a gunner seat. So in order to control the guns from this front position, I added a whole lot of detail in there to help simulate some controls. So on the back of the pilot headrest, you can see I used a translucent piece right there to help simulate a screen. So the co-pilot / gunner actually has a screen to look at. So it's not like they're just moving some levers. Like a lot of LEGO sets don't really include a dashboard with an actual screen control panel for somebody to look at. So I just wanted to add in that extra bit of detail there so the co-pilot actually had something to look at. And then down below, you can see I use more clear cheese wedges to help simulate some more control panels, dashboards, and screens. And then as well, you can see an old sticker piece. I don't know from what set, but it has some like valves and buttons on there to help simulate some detail. And then as well on the left, a few different translucent color pieces. So the 2 lightsaber hilts with the arrows in them, they aren't actually meant to be weapons. It is just some nice side detail, but I guess they could be used as weapons if you wanted to. But the seat build's real nice. Both characters in the pilot and co-pilot seat are only connected by 2 studs. So they're securely in there, but they aren't stuck in there. Like their legs won't get stuck when you pull on their torso. So that pretty much covers the front section. Let's go over the next little bit. So in order to go over the next section, we are going to have to expose quite a bit of the build. So we're going to lift off the roof and we'll get in there. So the next 2 little sections I wanted to go over is this kitchen area and then the prison cell area. So you can see in this corridor across from the jail cell, I just have a little bit of storage. I moved around the crate that came with the set and added some cannon ammo on top to add a little bit of extra detail and like some lived-in features. So on this interior corridor, there's actually nothing there. There's no detail in there, just the chain that flows down through the gap in the door to keep the prisoner secure. And then I do have this door right here to go into the kitchen area. But we'll flip around on the backside, and you can see I still have that slave layout figure back here in the jail cell, but we'll get her out. Just slip her away. And you can see how I have that chain flowing through the gap in the door so they can pass food through to feed their prisoner and keep them alive. But you can see how I modified the door in the overall jail cell space to make it more of a hallway. And I minimized the jail cell because I wanted it to be a very small, uncomfortable area. Because these are bounty hunters, so they are going to have a jail cell and they don't want their prisoner to be comfortable. So then through the door, we have this nice little kitchen area. On this front end, I added a nice little drink table that has some nice exotic beverage in that translucent green cone. And then nice little chair to go up against the table. In this rear section there, I still have the chicken bone and the fish hanging from the top. And then next to the jail cell door, I still do have that frying pan hanging there because I couldn't find another spot to put that. So now that we're flipping around, let's get our weak way out of there so we can get a better look. So you can see I used that extra jail cell piece that I didn't use right here as a nice little fence right there. I'm going to take this off though so you guys can see the modified stove build. So if you look and if you have this set, I did change up the stove quite a bit. I moved those translucent orange studs in there to help simulate a fire, like burning or boiling whatever food you're making in there. And then I added the fire extinguisher like headpiece to simulate some piping so it looks like the stove is actually powered. And then you can see I still have the big old pot cooking on top. And I added a black stud above it to simulate like a vent, like a range hood vent that you have in real life in kitchens. And then behind the stove area, I have that blue food, whatever it is. And then I have a clear cheese wedge tile to help simulate a control panel that opens and closes that jail cell door. So now we're on to the third and last large section in the ship. And this is where I'm incredibly proud of. I really packed some detail in here. It went through a few different versions, but I'm incredibly happy with where we ended up. So in the rear area, you can really see what I put in. We're going to go ahead and get Dengar out and we'll take a look. So on that far side there, you can see I added a nice little bed. It is actually a nice little double-decker bed, and you can actually fit minifigures on the bottom and top. You can't close this rear wall with a minifigure on the top, but you can with on the bottom. And originally on this bed here, I did actually have tan bricks simulating the furniture and like the pillow and blanket detail. But then I figured it looked a little too similar to Corellian and like Millennium Falcon type ship architecture, which Jabba's sail barge isn't. So I knew I had to change that up. So using the Bounty Hunter's Battlepack pieces, I went ahead and modified that a little bit to make it seem a little bit more colorful. And because Bounty Hunters are some of the most unique characters ever, they don't really care for matching or style or anything. So the bright blue kind of contrasting with the way the rest of the ship looks really fits with the theme. And then going to the left of the bed, you can see I built into this left side of the bed a nice little weapon clip so you can store some weapons on there. And then just to the left of that, I know that is a miniature TIE Fighter windshield piece, but I am using that as a dashboard screen, kind of a control panel. And this is the control panel that controls that turret that I mentioned earlier that had that nice little technology added in on the side so it looked like it could be controlled wirelessly. So I took off that bed and flipped it around so you can get a better look at that workbench over there. So I took off some pieces to get some better light in there, but now you can get a better look at that workbench. I continued some of that light blue theme underneath the workbench there to help just fill in the space and add in some detail. The workbench is also offset on jumpers, so it isn't just directly on top of even studs. You can see on top, it looks like Dengar was tinkering with one of his weapons. They have some backpack storage as well as 2 weapon clips on the left side there. And then a nice little drink to hydrate yourself while you're working, and then just some cans and some little bits of detail on there. So I wasn't sure what to throw to the left of the workshop table right there, but I figured bounty hunters, when they're on the road traveling, they probably want to keep up on their game, so they might have a training droid or two. So that's kind of what that guy's simulating right there. He's powered down at the moment, obviously, but that's kind of what I tossed in that corner right there. So then the most important part of this interior and the final part of it is Max Rebo. Now, I know Max Rebo doesn't quite fit into the idea of the Bounty Hunter Cruiser, but overall, I didn't really know what I wanted to cram in this area back here. Well, I did, but I didn't have the pieces or the ability to really fit it in there with the unique shape that it is. So overall, I just moved the carpet that was underneath Jabba before, and I moved it underneath Max Rebo in the back. I extended out his floor area there, and then I added a little bit of extra detail to help fill in the empty gaps on the outside. But Max Rebo's instrument still does spin around, no problem. It is the exact same build. I did put him up on jumpers, though, so he is sitting a little higher. Originally in the set, he sits really low, and you can barely even see him over it. So I elevated him up a little bit, and he still fits in the set just fine. But overall, in this rear area, other than expanding it and adding the carpet, I didn't really do much. It's pretty much the exact same. So I have one last feature for the interior, and like I mentioned it earlier when we were going over the top deck, it does combo with the outside. So we've added on the roof, and you can see something's hanging above Dengar, and you can see he has quite a bit of headspace as well. So even the taller minifigures that you have will fit in this interior space despite having this hanging feature. So now that I raised you guys up a bit, we're going to go ahead and move Dengar out of the way actually. And then on this top half here, you probably saw it earlier, it did almost look like a top hatch, and that's because that's exactly what it is. It does fold open and give you access to the interior, and no minifigure can really just jump that high. So sitting above Dengar, I actually had a functional fold-out ladder. So I'm incredibly proud of the fact that I was able to add this hatch. I was kind of inspired from my Knights of Ren transport build, how that had an actual hatch with an actual ladder, and it all made sense on how to get on the inside. So I feel like that kind of set up a trend for me personally with my mods that I'm going to continue with all of them in the future. And this one was no exception. I do have that nice little hanging ladder. And then as well with the ladder on the inside, you can actually see that the hatch is open and does go down. But other than that, that was the last and final thing I wanted to show off was just this nice little hatch. You can put a minifigure in the top and they will sit nicely just on the ladder. But like you did see earlier, with the hatch all the way closed and the ladder folded all the way up, you did actually have minifigure space for Dengar to be standing behind the desk. So if you do have the IG-88 or /11 figure from the Bounty Hunter's Battlepack, he would fit in here probably as well. So despite all the features and the extra detail I was able to cram in here, you still do have plenty of minifigure space for your whole crew. So when I bought the sail barge, this was the idea to make a Bounty Hunter's cruiser. I had the idea in conjunction with the Bounty Hunter's Battlepack as some extra pieces. So I knew what I was doing when I got into this, and I definitely feel like I accomplished my goal. So I hope you guys did enjoy. Like I said earlier, this is definitely one of my most proud mods. I feel like I say that with almost every video. Maybe that's just because it's a super fun process. But I definitely enjoyed this, and I hope you guys did too. And if you'd like a tutorial for any of the little bits of detail, like the bed build or anything, just let me know in the comments and you might see that pop up on my Instagram. Alrighty guys, well I hope you guys enjoyed this build, and if you guys did and you want to suggest any alternate builds or mods down in the comments below, just let me know, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace, fellas.